Welcome to a half hour of informed debate from across Europe. The editors on CNBC Europe. I'm Simon Hobbs. Thank you for switching us on. What a week it's been. History in the making. Europe's stock markets hammered again and again with accounting concerns as Bristol Myers and Merck came through in the wake of Enron and WorldCom. Our stock markets in Europe hit four-year lows. 150 billion euros in wealth was destroyed on Thursday's session alone. Fred Kempe is the editor of the Wall Street Journal Europe. Thomas Knipp, the editor of Germany's Handelsblatt. Gianni Riotta, the co-editor of the Italian daily La Stampa. And Ronald van der Krol, deputy editor of the Dutch financial daily Het Financieele Dagblad. Let me kick off with you, Fred. Was Schroeder right?
No. Greed is global. What happened in the 1990s is it just had more opportunity in the United States. The bigger the boom, the bigger the bust, the bigger the greed, and the bigger the abuse. And that's really what's happened here. I talked to Andre Lazen, who's the longtime chairman of Agfa Gayford, and I said to him, why isn't there a European Enron? Will there be a European Enron? He said, no, there won't be. I said, well, why not? And he said, because we're not transparent enough. And he said he still believes in the United States system because of how it is now responding to Enron, how it's responding to WorldCom.
Gianni, what's the reaction been this week in Italy?
It has been fun because people are finally seeing the big bully, the United States, in trouble after so many years of... yeah, exactly. Because people say the United States machine makes more jobs than Europe, everything is fine, 10 years of growth. Now they are in trouble. I think this fun has to end very, very soon because we have our own problems, our big companies are in trouble, and I don't think there's going to be a European Enron. But when you see France, Italy, Portugal toying around with the Stability Pact, what are they doing? They are cooking the books exactly as the American companies did. So the European trouble would be with the Stability Pact.
Ron, what do they say over in Amsterdam? How's the Dutch financial community reacting? Because you are very exposed, of course, through the multinationals to the States in particular.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody's laughing. I mean, I think people are quite nervous and are quite worried as well. And I think we also in Holland and all of Europe have the ingredients that were there in America as well. I mean, greed as well as a human instinct, as you say. But we've, over the past few years, imported so many American business practices, options for CEOs. So sort of this cult of the CEO has also taken off to an extent in Holland. So although we haven't had an Enron ourselves yet, it could be down the road at some point that we would see something like that emerge because we're not so different ultimately in how we do business.
Thomas, some standing words from Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder.
Well, I think Schroeder should mind his own business in a lot of ways. You have to remember it's election campaign out there in Germany, and a lot of what he's saying these days, not only on what's going on in America, but at Deutsche Telekom too, is you can only understand in the whole mindset of the election campaign. In one way, I think he is not too wrong. Fred, you're right. Greed is global.
Whatever he did, the Democrats were going to go further. And so, whatever he did, he was going to be trumped by the Democrats. Clearly, he comes from a big corporate friend government. There's no doubt about it. And he has moved steps in the right direction. The Senate bill goes further than Bush. The House bill doesn't go as far. There'll be a compromise in between. There'll be steps that'll be taken. But clearly, Bush didn't win politically this week. But it's hard to understand what he could have done that wouldn't have been criticized.
Well, he could have come out with firmer steps, I suppose. There was a feeling that he'd borrowed too much and that all the action might be too delayed.
I mean, sorry for me to interrupt
you.
I mean, what should he have done? I mean, what he did is he said, 100 million for the SEC to be able to prosecute, to find crooks and bring them to punishment.
But what they want is they want him to throw out the SEC head, Pitt. They want him to go out.
Well, that would have been worth it, wouldn't it?
Well, it would have helped him in the short term politically, but it would have weakened him politically because it would have shown how vulnerable he is. So these are all political calculations right now.
So basically you're saying that this is going to re-energize, America will take it on the chin, if you like, and we'll return to high levels of growth. I mean, do you think that could happen here in Europe? You talk about a sense of crisis.
Well, I think American companies are far ahead of Dutch companies or European companies in terms of being innovative and getting these jobs. Yes, I think.
You look at Philips and you think that. You look at ABN AMRO and you think that.
Yeah, I don't think that they've moved nearly as quickly as American companies have done. And I think, so in some ways, I agree with Fred that you have to look there and say, well, that's where the dynamism is coming from. If you look at what the Dutch companies have done in recent years, the share options, all the things that the ingredients that could lead up to a Dutch Enron or a European Enron, that all came from a time when the internet and the technology boom was taking place, and people thought America is the place to be for new business and new technology.
So do you make it implicit in what you said, and it's a very strong statement about the fear, I mean, it's a subjective view, you fear the move to the left. It's very difficult to argue free markets, for example, in London at the moment, to people who have lost half of their lifetime savings. They won't be able to pay their mortgage when they retire because the system, the capitalist system, has actually failed them. I mean, there is still a very strong argument there, isn't there, about how you regulate that and how you make it work.
The capitalist system has not failed. Sorry.
Absolutely. We Thomas and I don't always agree on everything. But
why do you say the capitalist system hasn't failed?
Because the capitalist system is about prices going up and down.
No, surely the capitalist system is about people being able to come to market in a company form and raise money on it. And look at how many placements or IPOs are being pulled left, right, and centre. SAB Miller was a huge one that had to come back from the market. That surely is a failure of the primary purpose of those markets.
But it's the principles. It's the principles of American capitalism that have gone wrong. It's not capitalism itself. One has not abided by the principles of that capitalism.
Fred, gentlemen, we have to leave it there. I'm afraid we have to take a very quick commercial break. We'll resume the conversation after that. A reminder that you're watching The Editors on CNBC Europe. If you'd like to enter the debate or comment on the programme, our email address is theeditors@cnbceurope.com. Stay with us. We'll be back after this very short break. Welcome back. You're watching The Editors on CNBC Europe. We're discussing a tumultuous week on the markets, the accounting scandals, the fall in the stock markets, and indeed Europe's reaction. Let me come back to you, Thomas. We were speaking in the break about the way in which there is not a discussion at the moment about the way in which together Europe and the United States could try and mend these fences that are obviously broken.
Well, I think it doesn't help the global economy if you just stop the debate at the point that the US is superior or Europe is superior or whatever. What has to happen is that the two parties, Europe and America, get together and start discussing what are the best global accounting standards.
An American CEO called this the Watergate for companies. Enron was the Watergate for companies. 30 years later, we still don't completely trust politicians because of Watergate. And I think it's going to be the same thing for shareholders and companies. But that's not a bad thing. It means that the shareholders are going to be more careful about what they invest in.
Absolutely. They would, Enron, WorldCom, it was in a way, it was so obviously visible that even we as journalists should, be a little bit more criticism to say, well, we didn't see it too. We didn't ring the alarm bells, not even loud enough. I think it's a good shock for the system.
Why is that? Because financial journalists don't bother to read the accounts because they don't really understand them. It's been claimed this week that financial journalists actually don't understand accounts, let's be honest about it.
Well, I mean, at least the financial journalists in the newspapers we represent here, they do understand the accounts.
A good percentage of them understand the accounts.
Why did the media not do its job?
I could point to the stories any of us have done that were skeptical, but there is no doubt that the journalists have something to learn from this as well. We were not skeptical enough. We also listened to analysts a little bit too much. The analysts who were paid to be skeptical and to understand these companies weren't skeptical enough. And we started thinking double-digit profits every year forevermore.
7 loans. You remember the 7 loan scandals 10 years ago? We missed that too. It's difficult to track down these things. Do we have access to all the books, to everything? I don't.
But every economic boom ends with scandals. This was a bigger boom. There are now some big scandals.
Can I ask you guys something? Will the American press be as nasty with President Bush on the scandals they were with Whitewater to President Clinton, or they will be nicer?
But this isn't equivalent to Whitewater. This is more.
It's worse.
No, it actually isn't. The Whitewater. That's a long program. But I would make it equivalent to Hillary Clinton's $100,000 earning in commodities, and it will go away just as quickly on Harkin. But again, watch Dick Cheney and Halliburton. I don't think Harkin has legs.
Do you think it'll go away, Rob?
No, I think it'll eventually go away, but I think people's confidence has been shaken. I don't think that will return. I think the markets may go back up again, but I think people will remain much more skeptical, and perhaps that's not a bad thing.
Are you aware of the effect that you guys could have on these financial markets? Because you will hunt like a pack. That's how journalists behave. That's why some of the scandals will miss. If you decide to go after the accounts now, you go after individual companies, you can actually prevent these markets from recovering.
Well, we don't hunt like a pack. Simon, you're always provoking people.
You do. Journalists do hunt like a pack. The story's there. At the moment, it's Deutsche Telekom. You bet. This weekend, beginning of the week, there'll be loads of stories because everybody will go after the same topic.
Well, I mean, the size of debt at this company and the fact that the CEO is going to go out, it makes the story go to the top. Everyone's covering it. Everyone's trying to get certain information. But we all are trying to get the real information.
We're coming towards the end of the program, unfortunately. I'd like to get a last comment from all of you, starting off with you, Gianni, if I may.
I think that President Bush will pay dearly, and I think he's fighting a very, very uphill fight for the midterm election in November.
Ron?
I don't see confidence returning anytime soon to the markets, and I'm afraid that it's really going to start hitting the economies as well and bring us into a sort of a spiral.
Thomas, briefly.
I think that societies and markets did not even start to understand what all this means, that the double-digit growth is over for the foreseeable future.
And finally, Fred,
we will soon learn this isn't an American problem, this is a global problem, and we will have global end-runs.
Unfortunately, we have to leave it there, but thank you all for joining together today to discuss what has been a tumultuous week on the markets. Fred Kempe, the editor of the Wall Street Journal Europe, Thomas Knipp, the editor of Germany's Handelsblatt, Gianni Riotta, co-editor of the Italian daily La Stampa, and Ron van der Krol, deputy editor of the Dutch daily Het Financieele. Dagblad, forgive me if the pronunciation was wrong. You've been watching The Editors on CNBC Europe. Join us same time in 1 month.